There are 47 semiconductors inside this phone, and every single one of them is about to get more expensive. The average American household is projected to pay $1,300 more in 2026 just from tariffs, and electronics are one of the biggest reasons why. Right now, tariffs up to 145% are hitting Chinese imports. New duties of 10 to 25% apply to goods from Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. And as of January 15, 2026, a brand new Section 232 tariff on semiconductors is already in effect, with the Commerce Secretary publicly threatening to raise it to 100%. Industry analysts project smartphones could rise 31%, laptops 34%, and gaming consoles up to 69%. Today I'm breaking down exactly how this is happening, why it's going to get worse before it gets better, and what your phone, your laptop, and your wallet are going to look like by the end of the year. Let's get into it. Unlike lumber and steel, this didn't come in one clean tariff announcement. It came in 3 waves. Wave 1 was China. Starting in early 2025, the administration imposed escalating tariffs on Chinese imports, eventually reaching up to 145% on many goods. That matters enormously because China dominates consumer electronics manufacturing. According to the Consumer Technology Association, China accounts for 78% of U.S. smartphone imports, 79% of laptops and tablets, and 87% of gaming consoles. If it has a screen, there's a good chance it was assembled in China. Wave 2 was country-specific tariffs. Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Vietnam, and Malaysia, every major electronics manufacturing hub outside of China, got hit with rates ranging from 10 to 25%. Companies that moved factories out of China to dodge Wave 1 ran straight into Wave 2. Wave 3 landed on January 15th, 2026. The president signed a Section 232 proclamation, the same national security law used for steel, aluminum, and lumber, imposing a 25% tariff on certain advanced semiconductors. Right now, this tariff is narrow. It targets high-end AI chips like NVIDIA's H200 and the MI325X from AMD. It exempts consumer electronics, so your phone, your gaming PC, and your car are not directly hit yet. But here's what makes this the most important tariff to watch. The proclamation explicitly says broader tariffs on all semiconductors are coming after trade negotiations conclude. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has publicly stated that Korean and Taiwanese chip makers that do not invest in the U.S. could face tariffs of up to 100%. The 90-day negotiation window ends around April 14th, 2026, which is less than 2 months from now. That is the date that could change the price of every electronic device in America. And there's a second force making this worse that has nothing to do with trade policy. But first, let me explain why you can't just buy American electronics. Here's the number that explains this entire situation. The United States consumes roughly 1/4 of the world's semiconductors, but produces only 11%. We use 1/4, we make 1/10. That gap is the problem. The vast majority of chips are manufactured in East Asia. Taiwan's TSMC alone produces over half of the world's advanced semiconductors. South Korea's Samsung and SK Hynix make most of the world's memory chips. These aren't supply chains you can relocate in a year or a decade. The CHIPS Act set aside $280 billion to build new fabs on U.S. soil. TSMC is building in Arizona, and Intel is expanding in Ohio. But here's the reality. The TSMC Arizona facility produces chips at roughly 30% higher cost than the same chips made in Taiwan. Building domestically does not make electronics cheaper. It makes them more expensive. And those fabs will not reach full production for years. TSMC Arizona is booked through 2027. Best Buy's chief executive officer put it bluntly. About 60% of their cost of sales flows through China. She said these supply chains are incredibly complex, and companies that have tried to build them in the US have largely not succeeded. So the same price floor effect we covered in our steel video applies here. When imported chips cost more, domestic chip prices rise to match. Remember the gas station analogy? If stations on one side of town charge $5 because of a tax, stations on the other side raise their price to $4.90. The tariff creates a floor, and the whole market adjusts upward. But with electronics, there is a second force pushing prices up that did not exist with lumber or steel. And this is what makes video number 3 different from the first two. The global chip supply is being pulled away from you toward artificial intelligence. Companies like Microsoft, Google, and OpenAI are buying up semiconductor capacity at an unprecedented scale. AI data centers need massive amounts of advanced memory chips, the same kind that go into your phone and laptop. According to TrendForce, memory prices surged 30% in late 2025 and are projected to rise another 20% in early 2026. Smartphone manufacturers are literally getting pushed to the back of the line. TrendForce projects. Smartphone production will decline 2% in 2026, and laptop production will drop 2.4%, not because people do not want them, but because the components are being redirected to higher-margin AI products. Budget phones are already shipping with lower specs. Some are returning to 4 GB of RAM, a specification most people thought we had left behind years ago. So tariffs raise the cost of importing chips. AI demand reduces how many chips are available. The combination means higher prices, lower specs, and fewer choices. So what does this actually look like on a price tag? If the Consumer Technology Association's modeled tariff rates are fully passed through to consumers, smartphones could rise about 31%. On a $1,000 flagship, that is $310 more. Even on a $400 mid-range phone, that is an extra $124. Laptops and tablets face a projected 34% increase, roughly $300 more on a $900 laptop. Gaming consoles could spike up to 69%. Sony has already raised every PlayStation 5 model by $50, directly citing tariffs. Now, if you do not own a gaming console and you are thinking this does not apply to you, it does. Semiconductors go into everything. Your car already has over 1,000 chips, and those tariffs stack on top of the steel and aluminum tariffs we covered in video number 2. Your appliances, your thermostat, your medical devices, all of them use chips that are now more expensive to source. Here's what I want to know from you. Have you delayed buying a phone, laptop, or console because of what you are seeing on price tags? What are you noticing? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Some companies are trying to get ahead of this. Apple reportedly flew in 5 plane loads of inventory before tariff deadlines. Other companies temporarily paused sales to rework pricing, but stockpiles run out. And when they do, the full tariff cost hits the shelf. If you are thinking about waiting for prices to drop, the same thing we said about cars applies here. There is no short-term mechanism that brings these prices down. Tariffs are still in effect. Domestic production is years away from meaningful scale and costs 30% more anyway. AI demand for chips is accelerating, not slowing. The broader semiconductor tariffs have not even been announced yet. The April deadline is approaching fast. This is the same permanent shift pattern we have tracked across this entire series. With lumber, Canadian producers pivoted to Asian buyers. With steel, automakers started redesigning cars around different materials. With electronics, the shift is the reorientation of the entire global semiconductor industry toward AI at the expense of consumer devices. Once chip manufacturers invest in production lines optimized for AI, those factories do not switch back. Once trade routes get rerouted, supply chains do not snap back. And once prices go up, they rarely come all the way back down. Let us bring it together. The US consumes a quarter of the world's semiconductors, but produces only 11%. Tariffs up to 145% on Chinese electronics 10 to 25% on other major manufacturing countries, and a new Section 232 tariff on advanced chips are all raising costs. If fully passed through, smartphones could rise 31%, laptops 34%, and gaming consoles up to 69%. Building domestic chip production takes years and costs 30% more. AI demand is pulling chip supply away from consumer electronics, and broader tariffs are expected within months, potentially as high as 100%. 3 things to watch. First, whether the administration follows through on broader semiconductor tariffs after the April negotiation deadline. Second, whether Apple and other major brands raise flagship prices or quietly downgrade specifications to hold price points. Third, whether the US and Taiwan semiconductor deal signed the same day the tariff took effect becomes the template for other countries, or falls apart. The pattern across this series is consistent. Tariffs on something you cannot easily replace make everything that uses it more expensive. With lumber, it was your home. With steel, it was your car. With semiconductors, it is everything in your life that runs on a chip. If this series is helping you understand what's happening with prices, subscribe so you do not miss the next one. If you have not seen the first 2, lumber tariffs and housing, and steel tariffs and cars, they are linked right here. Each one builds on the last. See you in the next one.